We're in the final week of the 2024-25 NBA season, and this is a time period where you're looking for teams to either strengthen their case to be contenders in the playoffs, or you're looking for the pretenders to expose themselves. On today's episode, I want to talk about a team that I think that I was a little bit sleep on, admittedly, in the season, and especially with their last two wins. The Houston Rockets are really trying to show the league that they can be taken seriously in this playoffs. We're going to talk about it all and more right after this.
Welcome to the number one place for your daily basketball news and analysis, NBA Central.
What's going on, basketball fans? Welcome to another episode of NBA Central, your number one spot for everything basketball related. I'm the host, Terry Hayes, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at NBA Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today. And I actually want to talk about the Houston Rockets. The Houston Rockets had themselves a weekend, beating the OKC Thunder 125-111, and also beating the Golden State Warriors 106-96 in what was a playoff atmosphere type game. Now, I think that phrase is overused at times, but when you look at how chippy that game got against Golden State Warriors, I think that it was actually pretty accurate to what that game felt like, right? Now, with the win over the Thunder, right, and the Rockets and the way that they did that, the way that the defense played in that team, the fact that they were able to put up 125 points against an OKC Thunder defense that is extremely deep. I look at this and I personally say that, that was a really good win. The Golden State Warriors were a really good win. When you look at the Houston Rockets and their wins above 500 teams as well, really solid, right? So the Thunder are this team that, in my opinion, like, while we're trained to typically look at young teams in their first year to say, hey, like, yeah, they're young, they're really good, but this isn't going to be their time quite yet. You have to fail first, and then you learn how to win, and then you come back stronger the next season. The Houston Rockets have been a team that, for the entirety of the season, have the fourth best defensive rating in the league. They have the 12th best offensive rating in the league. And typically you like to say the teams that can be top 10 in both offense and defense have a legitimate shot. Right now, their offensive rating is a little bit below that, right? But then when you look at the last few games, right, they've been 10th in offensive rating over the last 10 games. Over the last 20 games, they've been 6th in offensive rating. Then over the last 5, they've been 5th, where their defensive rating has not slid at all. It's actually gotten better in some of those stretches than what they've been at on the season. Now, that, of course, looks at what your opponents are and who all that and plays a part into it. But this is a team that, while we know that they're missing something in like a go-to score, right? I think that that's been evident in some of the Houston Rockets losses, and that could become even more evident in the playoffs as far as they need that go-to scorer. And it really will come down to a player like Jalen Green, right? Is he playing smart, right? Jalen Green, a player that we know that he can fill it up. Is he passing at the right time? Are the turnovers limited? How is Jalen Green playing, right? Alperen Sengun, we already know that he can be an absolute monster when it comes down to it as well, but this is a team that's doing it with their depth. That's what I love so much about it. You, of course, have Dillon Brooks and Fred VanVleet as both 31-year-old players that are really raising the average age of that team. Even with those two players, their main 10 rotational players have an average age of 24 years old. You take out those two 31-year-old players, and it drops significantly, right? Like, this is a team that has so many players averaging double figures. When you look at it, I think it's 7 or 8 players averaging in double figures. The depth is there. They all understand their roles as well. Now, I'm not in any way trying to come here and glaze and say that the Houston Rockets should all of a sudden be looking at some championship contender. They have to prove that by what they're going through the playoffs. But me, admittedly, as somebody who looked at this Houston Rockets team and saw a team that is solid, is good, right? It's damn good. Make no mistake about it. A damn good regular season team. I had my doubts over the playoff basketball and the way that could shake out for the Rockets. Now, with a lot of teams in the Western Conference, not just the Rockets, seeding is going to matter. They're already have their playoff locked in, right? And we'll see what happens there. They've already won their division, so know they're guaranteed to host a playoff series as well, which I think is really important for a young team like the Houston Rockets to be able to host that series and see what they can do at that point in time, with them being more than likely finishing in either the second or the third seed, right? I still think that them having a 4-game lead above the Lakers at that 3 seed. Then you look at the 4 seed, between 4 and the 8th seed, they only separated by half a game, right? So they're going to be a lot of teams jockeying for position there. The Houston Rockets either 2 or 3, and that would be if things go absolutely terrible for them, and I don't see that happening, right? So this is going to be a team that, depending on who comes out of that play-in, who is the 7th seed in that case. I think that that's going to matter as well for how far that team goes. If a team like the Golden State Warriors drops down to number 7, which is a possibility, we'll see. If it stays the Minnesota Timberwolves, we'll see there as well. But I think that this Rockets team has earned the benefit of the doubt, at least for me, that it's no longer moving the goalposts and saying, well, we'll see what they do. I think now that this is a team that you have to say has a legitimate chance to make it to the Western Conference Finals. Like, yeah, you got some teams like the experience over Denver, especially with Jamal Murray is going to end up being healthy. Reportedly, there's some thought that he may not be healthy by the playoffs there, and if he's not, that really changes some things. The Clippers are a team that, of course, are they're deep within it. A lot of hangs on how good Kawhi Leonard is and how healthy he is over the course of that. The Minnesota Timberwolves have a good team, and they've been playing a lot better here over the second half of the season, but they still have huge questions as well, right? There are so many big questions about every team in the Western Conference that when you look at the Houston Rockets, even with the Los Angeles Lakers, can they play enough defense? Is their depth going to be enough in the playoffs? The Houston Rockets, their biggest question is, are they going to have a go-to scorer when needed? And then are their most reliable scorers going to actually be able to do that in the playoffs? But they have a better base as far as the defensive ability that they play with, how they get out in transition, right? The different looks that they can continue to throw at you. And then as well, this could be a star-making run for Amen Thompson as well. When you look at him going into the playoffs, there's a lot of things. But I love it when teams are able to make me change my stance on how I view them coming into the season. And the Houston Rockets have more so than done that. This is one of the most young, exciting teams in the league that has tons of assets when it comes down to it as well. This is going to be very, very interesting. And I think that whatever the Houston Rockets does here, right, it gives their front office, their coaching staff, everything more data to look at, so then they can make a determination on what they want to do in the offseason, which is the special spot to be in, right? Because they have the assets, they have the ability to match contracts if they choose to do so. This is a Rockets team that has so much at their disposal, and I think that it's going to be a really fun playoff run for this Houston Rockets team, and I think it's going to be very fun. With that said, one of the teams that the Houston Rockets beat this weekend was the Oklahoma City Thunder, who also had a terrible loss against the Los Angeles Lakers as well. And when you look at the Oklahoma City Thunder, I know people have used that to ask, well, is the luster worn off on them? Are they bigger? Could they lose in the playoffs more than what we thought about before? This is still a team that's beaten teams by a historical point differential. They're still solid offensively, amazingly solid offensively and defensively, and well balanced. There's so much that goes into that I personally can't. I'm not looking at these losses that the OKC Thunder had, and I'm not worried about them too much, right? There's you gave up 125 points and 126 points to the Rockets and the Lakers, respectively. So of course there's some thought process on that. Luka Doncic has always been a weird matchup for the OKC Thunder, right? Him alone, and that's going to be what's going to be the interesting part if those two teams do face off, right? The Lakers being in the 3rd seed could avoid them in the brackets. We'll see what happens there. But it just comes down to that part alone, right? I get it. Like, yeah, the Thunder have had some losses here that you look at. But let's not forget, even the Cleveland Cavaliers went on a long losing streak, a 4-game losing streak before as well, right? The end part of the season can be very interesting. I don't like to use it to kind of overstate or understate some things, but let's be clear here. The Oklahoma City Thunder aren't unbeatable, right? And I think that's the chink in the armor that I think everybody needs to realize. They do bleed, right? Like, to quote a movie, like, they do bleed. And because of that, this is a team that you still can look at and, they still got the things they need to figure out. They have their matchup issues just like every other team does. And with the OKC Thunder as well, like it comes down to so often for them, will they be able to hit their 3-point shots when it's needed the most? And that's been something that has definitely hurt this team at times during their season and playoff runs and things like that as well, right? So those are the questions facing the OKC Thunder. But these bad losses are losses that I look at and say, do they tell me more about the teams that beat them than they tell me about the Thunder? And that's the way I kind of look at it. Like, this is a Lakers team as well, right? I talked about the Houston Rockets, who, by the way, the Houston Rockets final games of the season, I know I kind of skipped that when I was talking about them. Like, they face all playoff teams to finish the season. They have the Clippers, the Lakers, and the Denver Nuggets on the last 3 games of the season. That's going to be fun to see how the Rockets come out of that. But for the Lakers, right, this is a team that, they still have their shortcomings. And I've said that before, right? But I think when you look at the Lakers, matchups matter to them a lot as well. They want to try to avoid some things. I think if they can avoid the 4-5 matchup, that's going to be important for them as well. And we still got to see who's going to be at the other seeds because it's so much up in air with the Western Conference playoffs. Like you're talking about by the end of the week, the 4 seed right now could be in the play-in tournament, right? That's legitimately how it could go in the Western Conference right now. But as you're fixing and looking at these things, right, yeah, the Lakers are a team that when they're on, they look so good. Now, I think that there is some overblowness when it comes to them. When they win a game really good, people are like, oh, my God, they can be a contender. When they lose a game, people are like, oh, my God, this team is not really going to do much. And the truth, as with every team, lies somewhere in the middle there, right? I think that's going to be the important part. Who are the Los Angeles Lakers more like, right? How do they overcome some of their defensive things, even though defense has not really statistically been a bad thing for them, but I think in the playoffs is going to be a different story with their lack of size and some of the teams that they can come up against. Those things are going to really matter for that Lakers team in the matchup there. But it's the wild, wild West. As it always been, as it is every single year, the Western Conference is such a crapshoot because you never know which way it's going to go because matchups play a huge part into it. All these things play a huge part into all of this. So when I look at the West, right, to me, the thing in the Western Conference has to be, personally, it just has to be, matchups are going to be really important. Who gets hot at the right times? Who can stay relatively healthy or healthy in the playoffs as well, especially with that team like the Denver Nuggets now who could, like, if Jamal Murray is hurt and cannot play in the playoffs, which there seems to be some serious doubt in that franchise if it's going to happen, you have to seriously ask yourself, is there a chance that the Nuggets may not make it out the play-in, right? Where they even dropped, like, there's some serious conversations that need to be happening there, right? Not to fearmonger or anything like that, but it's a very interesting case for teams that are very good, right? But some things may just not shake out for. So we'll see what ends up happening when it comes down to that. And, I think it's going to be a interesting place to watch how all this goes. But overall, we'll see it. We'll be here to cover it here at NBA Central, and we'll see what's going to happen here. Before we go, though, I got one more topic I want to discuss. And I want to talk about the chances of Kevin Durant and Giannis Antetokounmpo being moved this offseason. Kevin Durant and Giannis are going to be two of the biggest names potentially that everybody's going to be watching out for. We've heard conflicting things when it comes to Kevin Durant, right? We hear that the Phoenix Suns actually want to keep him. There's even some thought there that they don't, with rumors of the Nuggets and the Nets and the Warriors and all these teams that could be interested. The Spurs are a team that recently popped up per things. And that the second tax apron, right, is the thing that the Suns are really looking at that really would determine what they can do in all those places. You look at Giannis Antetokounmpo, a player that's been very verbal over the fact that he wants to be competing for something. And if he feels like he's competing for something, that changes, then he's fine staying in Milwaukee. His loyalty to Milwaukee has been very evident. But I think this is both these teams, for different reasons, are a perfect example of why not only the second tax apron is restrictive, the Suns more so than the Milwaukee Bucks. I think the Milwaukee Bucks actually made a move to help get themselves below that second tax apron this season. But how you build out a team, getting a star is really the first step. It's the first step in it. Now you need to go further than that. Now, luckily, Giannis was able to win a title in Milwaukee. Shout out to that season that they had. It was a great run, things like that. But the way that you need to continually put pressure on your franchise to make sure that you can always be in contention, that's the thing that's the most important thing here, right? The Milwaukee Bucks did get under that second tax apron really good to have some cap flexibility this offseason to where they're not right up against that line. But the thing is that if Giannis were to ever try to push himself out of Milwaukee, what does that franchise have left? What is that franchise then going to do? That's the question when it comes down to this, right? Like, they've given up first-round picks to build this team. They've sent out players that they probably, looking back on, would have loved to be able to keep. All those things are there and legitimate. And that's what it really comes down to with this team, right? So you got these teams over here that just, they got to figure it out, right? And if either one of these players are moved, right, whether it's Giannis, whether, there's been some rumors of him in the Warriors, which will take so much to get done, and Draymond would have to be included in that. We've heard, there's a rumor over the weekend or it was a speculation. I don't know if really to call it rumor is the right thing to call it, but as far as the Spurs and a proposal to get Kevin Durant to the Spurs, which would be absolutely crazy. But again, they have the assets to do it. We'll see where they fall in the Cooper Flag sweepstakes and things like that. But these right now, where we were in the player empowerment movement, I do think we're seeing a bit of a shift. Players are still definitely empowered, make no mistake about it, especially with franchises they've been with for a while, and they still do hold some power. But it's now that the way that teams have to build has changed so much because they don't have that same flexibility of just going so far into the luxury tax and just paying their normal tax bill. The second tax apron taken away exceptions and the ability to aggregate salaries to make other deals and things like that. We're seeing how this is going to change not only the super team era, but just the era of building on the fly as well. And you have to look at and value draft picks even more, right? So we'll see what the future does hold there. I think it's a very interesting conversation to have, and we'll see how it all shakes out. But that's my thought on that. You guys can let me know how you feel on everything below, man. Make sure you guys are following us at Bull Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullcentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the number one spot for everything basketball related. And I'll see you guys the next time I feel like making a video, probably tomorrow. Peace, y'all.
This has been a presentation of the Breaks Media.